Okay, good morning, everyone. Welcome to TAM Lab number 36. Today, I will be going through, myself and Victor Monga, a vRealize Network Insight overview, and we're going to deploy it in my lab, and it should be pretty fun. So I think today will be, for the most part, fairly unscripted, which I think everyone will agree. When I say unscripted, it sounds much better than I'm not prepared, but that's what it's going to be. But it should be pretty fun. So. Let me do a couple slides here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Victor to go through some overview slides, and then he's going to jump into the CNBU demo site, and then we'll go through the install in my lab, and we'll have a lot of hands-on activity here. So with that, Victor, do you want to do some quick slides first, and I can stop sharing?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay, great.
All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Victor Monga. I am Senior NS TAM. I'm assigned a couple of accounts, but again, it's not about me today. It's about TAM Lab. So we'll do a quick couple of slides, and then we'll jump into deploying. And we'll also do a CMBU demo lab. In that way, we can show the data and show the problems and events that we see day to day in our customers' environment. With that, this session is primarily focused on day one, vRNI. And we have next session coming up soon, maybe in December, for day two as well, where we will focus troubleshooting. We'll focus on day two things that we deal with in customers' environment. So we get this question a lot, like exactly vRNI. People get confused between these two terms, platform and proxy, and we hear again and again, am I logging into proxy? Am I logging into collector? I'm logging into platform. I'm logging into UI. So we just wanted to kind of give that a quick architecture overview. So platform is what we access over HTTPS, and that's a UI pretty much everybody access for the looking at the data. Proxy/collector, that's what it actually reaches out to all of the data points or data sources, we call it, and collects the data. As I'm showing on this architecture slide here, all the data sources collects by proxy or VM collector, which actually feeds that information to platform where we access it. So what does platform do? It does a lot of things. So it has UI REST API, it has search engine, it has analytics, it has flow store. So all of the things that when we query in vRNI, that's happening on platform. But as far as going to what's being captured by vRNI, that's a job by proxy. So proxy/collector, they're interchangeable terms. And that's what pretty much happens. So data store or data source get connected to proxy, proxy get the data, feeds it back to platform. That's where we query, that's where we see it. Any questions so far on that one? I'll pause for 1 second. Nope, okay. This is a relationship that we are showing here, that proxy VM feeds the data to platform, and platform is what we access, and we search the data, and pretty much all the management is happening on the platform. We hardly log into proxy. The only time we actually log into proxy to see the services, to check all the components that are being run and data is being captured. Other than that, we deploy proxy close to data source and then connect it to platform, and that is it. Ongoing, we always access platform. Doesn't matter if it's on-prem or it's SaaS, we'll talk about it. But primarily, it's always about platform where we will go in and query the data. Proxy is what's capturing the data. Platform is where we are accessing the data. All right. And then we have different brick sizing. I have a link here. Once we post the slides, you can go and look at it. We hear this complaint over and over again that what flow for 8 million flows, what the brick size would be. So we have this link, pretty decent link where it actually explains, go through the different sizing. So make sure you actually collaborating the platform and the collector/proxy deployment. So don't go with the medium platform and extra large proxy if that doesn't make sense in your environment. Make sure they are collaborated. With that, I'll pause here. Steve, why don't we start the deployment for platform in your environment?
Sure. If you want to stop sharing, I can share my screen.
Done.
Excellent. Can you see my screen?
Yep, I can see.
Okay, cool. So we're looking at my lab here, obviously. So it's a very straightforward deployment, right? You go to my VMware, you download products, you download the Proxy VM, you download the platform VM, and they're just OVAs or OVFs. So pretty straightforward. You're just going to right click in your cluster, and you always want to start with the platform first. So here's my OVA for that. It is pretty big, so this is almost 6.5 gigs. The proxy is almost 4 gigs, so they're pretty large, right? So we're going to choose platform first. We'll go next, give it a name. I'll call it 2 because I already have a 1, and I'll show you why here in a minute. Choose the folder you want to put it in, click next, choose the cluster, click next.
You promised the name is going to be Gummies Platform. What happened to that?
That's for customers, not in my lab.
Gotcha.
Okay, so it validated the OVA. Everything looks good. We're going to accept the EULA. Click next. Here's where you choose the deployment configuration. These are fairly large, right? So a medium, which is the smallest option we have, is 8 vCPUs and 32 gigs of memory. And then from a storage perspective, I don't think it shows it here, but if you recall on Victor's screen, it is a 1 terabyte disk size. So it's a pretty big footprint. But when you think about what it's doing and how much data it's collecting, it makes sense, right? So I'm going to go with medium. Choose your data store. Put it on the right network. And what's interesting about these OVAs is you don't really have the ability to configure like all the network stuff, right? Which you usually do with our virtual appliances. Instead, you deploy it and then you log into the console, and that's where you make all those changes. So there's really nothing else to do here. You click next, and then I would normally click finish, and it would go through and do all that. I did it ahead of time just because it is, like I said, almost 6.5 gigs, and it takes a while. So pretend I just clicked finish and it deployed. Here it is, and I haven't powered this on yet. So you can see it is 8 CPUs, 32 gigs of memory, 1 terabyte disk size. Also notice under the CPU, there's a huge reservation, which in my lab, I don't have enough horsepower to power this on. So I'm going to need to edit this and remove that reservation, which won't impact the VM from running. I wouldn't do that in production, though. I would keep it the way that they had it configured, right? So I'm going to put that to 0, and then power it on. And this will take a couple minutes as it goes through the power on. And luckily, there really is no customization that needs to happen here because you have to do it all from the console, right? So here we are at the console. Now we can log in, and it tells you exactly what to log in as. So console user, and then the password is right there, ARK1NC0NS0. That's an L3, not a 1. All
We
right.
all learned that a hard way.
Yeah, exactly. So at this point, I'm in, and then the last little hint they give you up there is just type in setup, and it'll take you into the setup. So yes, we want to continue. So now we need to set up some passwords. So this is the SSH user password or the support user. So I'm just going to use the default VMware 1bang. And then same with the CLI, so the console user. Okay. Now we're going to specify all the network settings, right? So what's the IP? And I already have DNS records for all this internally, so forward and reverse. But that is something you would want to do ahead of time. Netmask, default gateway, and then our DNS. Main search. Yes, that all looks good. So we'll save that.
Steve, while that's happening, let me know. We can flip it back to a couple of slides and then we can come back.
Yeah, I think once I start the proxy deployment, we'll do that. 42. Okay. All right, next step, we're going to put in our NTP. So you'd probably want to use something internal. Make sure this is consistent across all your environments. Pretty important here as we collect data because it's very time sensitive. So it's similar to like log insight. And I can't type today. I always use those. All right, does that look right? I think so. Okay, hit enter. It must be validating all those. Okay, and then the last option is just to configure a web proxy if you have one, which I don't. So I'm going to select no, and we are good. So at this point, it should kick me out of the setup here and reconfigure some things. But while that's doing that, I should be able to go to our URL. Not yet, apparently.
I had a quick question. What's the minimum sizes we can get away with the platform and the proxy for labs that aren't as robust as Steve's?
Well, so as you deploy it, you only get those three options, right? So you'll have to deploy it as medium, but you'd have to then, if you're saying your lab couldn't support that, go in after the fact, edit, and knock these numbers down, right? I haven't played with anything other than the medium size. So I know you could thin provision the disk, so you're probably okay there. But yeah, I haven't played with the CPU or memory. I don't know if anyone else has or can comment on that. Okay, so this is up and running now. So the first thing it wants you to do is enter a license key. And I just so happen to have one right here. And this is from internal. So we'll validate. All right, and it's going to want to set your admin password. This is different from the passwords we set during the setup process, like the console user and the support user. This will be your admin at local user. So I'm just going to use the same VMware one bang. And then we're going to activate. It might still be spinning up here. All right. I think it's still working. I'm probably going a little bit too fast. I think it's still doing some stuff in the background, but let's see if this takes. Yeah, okay, well, we'll let it go. Victor, I'll stop sharing and you can go through some more slides and I'll keep an eye on this in the background.
Okay, yeah, that sounds good. Let me go back to your slide deck. 1 second. There we go. All right, just to talk about again, the things that we need as Steve was showing in the demo that he set up the password. So there are 3 different passwords. So keep that in mind when we log into UI, it has to be admin at local. We cannot log into UI using console user or support. That's for CLI. Then we do need NSX Manager admin account password when we add as a data source. Then we need NSX controller password. So the point is that we do need all these passwords when we add the data sources, because without that, vRNI is not going to be able to parse any of the flows and the things that we actually want to see it in the UI. One thing I want to highlight that a lot of people have shown the concern that why do we need to provide VDS group modifier? You don't need to. If you can actually take the proxy IP and manually put into the vCenter, go to networking, and NetFlow, if you can actually manually enter it, you don't need to provide that. The only reason we would require it because we don't want to make that manual step for you if we can automate it. Then of course we need DNS servers, NTP servers, syslog server. It says optional. I would say it's not. It's mandatory. Make sure you have a syslog server and put that into vRNI instance as well. So you know when, if anything happens to vRNI instance itself, you can get alerted. So since a lot of people are relying on vRNI to get the alerts, if the instance itself is down, you want to get alerted from a different source. And then of course, CDP, LLDP must be enabled so that we can capture all the net flows, S flows, and IPFix and all of that stuff ongoing. I'm not sure on the call how many people are aware that we have a SaaS model as well. And there's a lot of confusion about like, okay, do I put my proxies over there in the SaaS as well? Then how do I send my data? Where do my platform lives? So a quick comparison. vRNI on-prem remains as it is. We put the platform and proxy on a customer managed data SDDC. That's what we are doing in Steve's lab. For SaaS model, we call it VMware vRealize Network Insight Cloud. We used to call it NI, just Network Insight. That's what we used to call it, but now it has been rebranded as VMware vRealize Network Insight Cloud. In SaaS model, we have platform that's VMware managed in cloud, and then we have proxies deployed in customer managed SDDC. So the way it works is you have the data source and proxy on the customer on-prem, and only 443 HTTPC going to platform. Going back to this diagram right here, proxy remains on customer on-prem, platform is in the cloud, so there's only one way 443 information going to platform. Does that make sense to everyone? Or any questions on that?
I think that's a huge benefit because the platform is a big footprint, right, on-prem. So if you can get that off-site, I think that makes a lot of sense to just have little proxy collectors everywhere. By the way, Victor, I'm ready to keep going here. If you want to flip it back to me real quick.
Yep, done.
Cool, thank you. Any other questions on what Victor was going through? Please feel free to speak up. Okay, so that did finish. So you can see that, and then I was able to get past that spot where we were changing the password, right? So now at this point, basically it's waiting for a proxy. And the one thing that you do need to put into the OVA deployment of the proxy is this shared secret, right? So you kind of have to have the platform provisioned and up and running before you can even move forward with the proxy, right? So that's why I couldn't do that ahead of time here. So I'm going to go back to here and then we'll get that process started. We'll get it kicked off, and that's going to take a little bit of time to upload the OVA and do all that. So at that point, I'll hand it back to Victor here. But same process, right? We're going to deploy an OVF. We're going to choose the proxy this time. We'll click next. And I'm going to use vRNI-proxy, put it in my vRealize folder, my prod cluster. All right, and it validates everything in the OVF. We'll accept the EULA, click next. Again, we're going to choose our size configuration. I'm just going to go with medium. This is quite a bit smaller than the platform, right? Because this is just collecting the data and forwarding it over to the platform, and it's not doing any of that heavy lifting like Victor was showing us earlier. So it is smaller. It's still a little bit large, but it's definitely smaller than the platform. So again, choose your data store, click next. Choose your network, next, And then here's that one thing that we do need to input, which is the shared secret. So I'm going to go back to here. I'm going to click generate. I'm going to copy this and I'm going to put it in here and then click next and finish. And so that's going to deploy, and that's going to take probably 5 to 7 minutes here in my lab. So while we're waiting on that, I'm going to stop sharing. And Victor, if you want to go back to some of the things you were talking about.
Yeah, I'm going to breeze through these so I can open CMView demo lab. So again, people who are interested into vRealize Network Insight Cloud, these are the steps that you will deploy the collector in your SDDC, and you'll get the pairing, the one Steve just did actually was perfect timing, that pairing token that you will get it during your onboarding call with the customer. And then you have to make sure the customer has forward rules to go to VMware Cloud Services. There are steps. I'm showing that in the link here. And then they do need to have access to their AWS public cloud account as well. Here's the thing, with NSX T25, there's a lot of hype around if the customer has NSX T25, that means they have access to NSX intelligence. Do they not need vRNI anymore? The answer is, do they want to look at only NSXT workloads, or do they want to look at end-to-end? And 9 out of 10, we are getting answer end-to-end. So they do need both. NSXT intelligence only get them whatever is happening for the NSXT environment. However, vRNI, we do add physical and virtual and SD-WAN and public cloud and all of the third-party firewalls as well. So they get end-to-end visibility, what's going on with that environment. Is anyone on the call getting any of these questions or any confusion around NSX intelligence versus vRNI? And do we actually need to have any discussion around it? Or are we good? I'll take that as a good. All right. These are the different steps that how we can actually use NSX intelligence and vRNI at the same time. So for app discovery, app network profile, everything has to be created in vRNI. That could be on the prem, or NI is the name we used to call it for the SaaS model. Then you can use NSX intelligence for auto microsegmentation policies and deploy. So that's a big thing with NSX intelligence. It can actually deploy the DFW right there. Where vRNI right now, we can't do it because it's more like you get the data, you run the report, and then you have to go back and deploy it on NSXT. And for the day 2 troubleshooting, then we come back for vRNI again. So first phase, we onboard everything onto vRNI and look at it. Then we use NSX intelligence to deploy those rules, then come back to vRNI for the troubleshooting and compliance. All right, so with the new vRNI launch, we have SD-WAN integration already. So people or your customers who are using Willow or SD-WAN, they can actually add that as a data source now. So the way it works is currently we only support one VCO, Velo Cloud Orchestrator, and they need to have a right license. So here's another question that we are getting. If people have vRNI, do they have SD-WAN integration data source by default out of the box? Answer is no, it's a separate license. So even if they have vRNI, they still have to buy SD-WAN license. That could be for on-prem vRNI, or that could be for the SaaS model. And it can be mix and match. Again, here we are showing that they would need their Velo Cloud Orchestrator URL, username, password, nickname, and from there, they can start seeing the path. This is typical screenshot you might have seen over and over again, but the only difference is here we are actually showing SD-WAN edges and hubs. That is very helpful for people who are, or the customers who wants to see that all the path from end to end. Again, vRNI goal is to provide the visibility from end to end and also provide the troubleshooting steps when the things are not going as planned. Again, another screenshot where we are adding public cloud as well. It shows everything end to end. Here's my favorite part. With NSXT 2.5 and vRNI latest version, and you can actually see the latency. So once you enable this right here, this check mark, you can actually see latency. And that was a big deal for us. We had to run these commands manually if there's any problem going on with for the latency. You could see this out of the box now, as long as these are the two requirements as we are showing here. It has to be NSXT 2.5 and vRNI latest, that is 5.0. And this is the last thing I wanted to show it. Everybody who's using vRNI in their customer environment, in their lab environment, make sure you actually go into settings, install and support, and look at these system healths. I'll give you a quick idea like how good my vRNI environment is. So because a lot of things are happening or relying on vRNI, you want to make sure that tool itself is happy and healthy. And from there, I will open my demo. One second.
So by the way, Victor, I do have an NSX T 2.5 environment here that we can connect it to. We're not going to see a lot of data because there's really nothing running in there, but you'll get to see all those knobs and switches that you were just showing. So
awesome. Yeah.
The proxy is at 75% deployed, so we've still got a little bit of time here.
Awesome. All right. Everyone who has VMware email address and Active Directory password, they have access to this. So I use it pretty much every day because, again, I don't have as beefy lab as Steve. So this is my playground right here, and I come in and use this for my learning, for my demos, and all sorts of things. So once again, everybody who has access to VMware email address should be able to log into this. So first thing I want to show is when you log in, you can just click on NSX here, and you can see all the NSX instances that are connected in this vRNI platform. I'm going to pick this one because that's where I have most of the 8 problems, and we're going to go through that. So first thing you want to look at is these key properties. It shows that this NSX manager is primary role, what the version is, segment ranges. Also, this is the most important part where it shows that backups are not enabled. A lot of times that we have seen customer security team or compliance team do not have access to their actual NSX manager because that's being managed by either cloud or VMware team or other teams or networking teams. But when they come in, they could tell like this NSX manager does not have backups enabled. So they can actually run a report and tell them, okay, we need to make sure that these backups are enabled, not only from the, whatever the backup solution they're using, it has to be enabled in NSX manager. This also tells you about NTP server, syslog server. This is the best part right here, NSX checklist rules. We have about, I want to say, 90 to 100 health checks. A lot of times people have asked us, how do I make sure that my configuration is good, or can you come in and run some sort of checks? And my answer is, do you have vRNI? Then you have me already there. You don't need me physically come in and show you this. All you got to do is click on NSX Manager, and this has all of the scripts that we manually have to run onboarded. So based on this checklist, we are going to have either problems or it's going to show that everything is good. Any questions so far on this one? I'll take that as a no. Awesome. See, Steve, how good I am? No questions so far.
Yeah, I know. You're really good. By the way, I'm ready to go when you want to hand it back.
Okay. So these infrastructure problems, non-infrastructure problems, it shows critical, moderate, informational, and here's the topology as well, where it kind of highlights where the problem is. And we'll continue the demo after Steve's next part. All right, go ahead.
All right. So, by the way, quick question for you. In that CMBU environment that you have, do you have admin rights? I mean, I'm just trying to understand. Could you go in there and break stuff, or is it pretty locked down for you?
It's pretty locked down. It's
okay,
more
cool.
Demo and learning purposes.
Good, good. Okay, so the proxy has deployed. At this point, I'm going to power it on, and it should be the same thing. We're going to need to go into the console and run through that setup. So it shouldn't take us too long here. Okay. Again, same thing. We're going to log in as the console user. Same password, ARK1NC0NS0L3. And then again, we got to run setup. So a lot of this will be the same as with the platform. So we're going to create some passwords here. Okay. And then again, we're going to give it the IP information. So just make sure you have your DNS record set up ahead of time. DNS with spaces. Okay, almost done with this part. Okay, I'm pinging it. All right, NTP, I'm gonna use the same ones. Oops. And that all looks good. So it's gonna test each of those real quick. All right, and then again, the web proxy, if you have one, which I don't, so I'm gonna say no. And then here, it's gonna use that shared secret that we used when we deployed the OVA. And it's gonna process that. And then if we give it a couple of minutes here, we should see it get detected now by the platform. And then we'll be ready to actually log in and start adding some data sources and things like that. So I'm not going to sit here and wait for this last piece. I'm going to hand it back to Victor, and you can continue with some demo stuff on the CMBU lab side, and then
Awesome.
we take it from there.
Yeah. A quick question for everyone, and this is more like a fun question. Do you know if we can add multiple proxies to multiple platforms? So can I have same proxy going to 2 different platforms? Anyone other than Steve?
Oh, good, because I don't know the answer. So
I think it's a no.
That was Mike?
That's Chris.
Chris? Yeah, answer is no, yeah. So one proxy, you can have clusters, we can create clusters, but we can manually create or configure one proxy going to 2 or 3 different platforms. They have to either go to one platform or clusters of platforms. So that has to be clustered internally. So, all right, so as I was explaining that on the right side, it shows topology. It also kind of gives you red warning sign that there's a problem. So the difference between infrastructure and non-infrastructure, since we are sitting on NSX Manager, so the way it's being interpreted as infrastructure means all the management plane of NSX Manager. So anything going on with the NSX Manager itself, anything is wrong with controllers. So anything related to actual NSX Manager infrastructure, that's where we highlight the problems here. However, anything being created using NSX Manager, such as segments or routing, that's being considered as non-infrastructure, means anything being consumed by a compute cluster. So once again, there's a difference between these two, but at the same time, the point is that before anyone or customers are going into production, they should look at these and kind of make sure that they understand the context around it, that they might need to remediate before they go into production. Critical, moderate, informational, that doesn't mean that do not even look at informational, because that might be critical based on the environment that they have. So once again, I'm coming from a security and compliance background. I always recommend everyone that look at all 3 and then pretty much collaborate what needs to be done. So you can click on critical and it'll show you what's going on here. Here we have big problem that might not be relevant to an environment. They were like, yeah, we know that, and we don't care about it right now. We have other criticals here. They are non-infrastructure. So you can look at it. It's showing that the DLR, external router. So one of the things that we have used and liked over and over again, the routing problem, because since NSX Manager does the segmenting, software-defined networking, it does rely on underlay network for the physical switches, routers, firewalls. We have seen that anything is changing on that side. They don't communicate well with the NSX team, and now all of a sudden they have an outage. vRNI can highlight at what point it actually happened. So I'm going to change that. If you see this right here, that means there was a problem right here. So they could be, Friday 5 p.m. and you just need to go back to your change management database and look at it if anything happened Friday 5 p.m. And yeah, most of the time, networking team made some changes on the routing, and that affected NSX Manager routing. So the point is that vRNI used to be, in the beginning, microsegmentation only tool. It's not. It's way more than that. It's for troubleshooting. It's for looking at the health of your NSX managers and the different data sources that you're adding here. This is more than that. All right. Let me go back.
I'm ready when you are, Victor, to go back.
Perfect. Perfect segue. Take it.
Awesome. All right. So everything's finally deployed. You can now see right here, hopefully you can see my screen. It finished configuring successfully. Everything's good. And if we go back to the platform now, boom, it's detected the proxy, and now we can move forward. So we can click finish here. And now we're ready for that first login. So this is admin at local, and whatever you specified the password to be. And okay, great. So of course we're going to join the CEIP.
Of course.
Of course, and then it gives you a little bit of just some overview around the product, everything that Victor just went through, but nowhere near as thorough, right? So we can start this little self-service wizard to get things going. Obviously, we don't have any data sources, right? So from here, I'm going to connect it to a couple of vCenters that I have in my environment. So you're going to choose which proxy you're going to leverage here, right? So if you've got multiple data centers and different proxies in each of those, you'd want to choose the one that it's closest to that vCenter, right? So so let me jump over to here. So here's the vCenter I was talking about, Victor, where I've got NSX 2.5 in here.
Yep.
It's just admin, right? So this is 2.5. I don't have a specific user account, but I would imagine that's a best practice, right, Victor? You would want to create a specific user account with the right permissions to leverage for this. Let's see if that works. Okay, so it worked. So I do want to enable NetFlow. Here you're going to choose your VDSs that you have. I think this is the one.
Yeah. So one thing that we add here, and this is what I was talking about, modification, right? That's where we need admin modified rights to DBS. What this is going to do is use the collector IP address and add that into NetFlow field in the networking port group, or vCenter. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, this is the wrong vCenter. So you would see that here under the VDS, right?
Yeah, it's in the settings. Yep.
Right here.
NetFlow.
So there's nothing there. Once we hit go, it's going to configure that for us.
Exactly. So if one customer says that they don't want to do it, they don't want to give modified rights, they can actually manually go in and do it. And yeah.
So we'll call this VCSA Pacific. If I can type Pacific and submit. And then let's add my primary vCenter as well. But you can see all the different types of sources we can connect to, which is actually very impressive here. We've got obviously vCenter, NSX, NSXT, VMC on AWS, native Azure and AWS, containers. Here's all the physical firewalls we support. I think Fortinet was just added, which is cool because Victor and I have a customer that's doing that. The converged infrastructure, so HP, Cisco UCS. Interesting, Dell's not in there, but okay. And then here's all the physical switches and routers. And here's where you configure login site, which is interesting. And then even CMDB as service now, which is cool. So anyway, let's add my other vCenter real quick. No. Okay, I'm going to enable that. I only have the one VDS here, and we'll call that just VCSA. Done. Let's also add NSXT here. So we'll do NSX MGR-Pacific. Ah, there you go. Sure, let's enable that. And this is, I'm pretty sure, NSX 2.5. Yeah. So it looks like it worked. And we'll call this NSX Pacific. Cool. So Victor, where do you want me to, do you want me to give you control and you can just poke around and show kind of this additional setup stuff that you would typically do, or?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
Share control. Again, keep in mind, there's not a whole lot of data just yet in there, but we can show all the options that typically we would do as after the installation. So first thing first, as I was telling you, you want to make sure after the installation, the system health, that's going to be your baseline. So either you want to record it somewhere, document it, that this is what was happening from right after installation. Then if a lot of people have, they're using public IP addresses in their internal data center, so that they consider that as east-west. So you might want to add that in there so that when you come in here, plan security, all of those IP addresses are considered as east-west and not north-south, because by default, anything public IP addresses, it might consider that as a north-south. So you want to give the right information when you're showing that reports to your C-suite. So once again, you want to have all that data to feed into vRNI to provide you the right information. So east-west IP subnets are usually whatever you're using internally, you want to add it here. Then this is what I was going to show you in CMBU demo as well. We have about 155 events. What that means is this is out of the box, and we have different categories. So I'm just going to search for NSX, for example. So there are 83 filtered events for NSX. You can go through these one by one and click on more details and look at it, what it does, and why it's going to show the severity critical. It might not be the same case for each environment. You can tweak it. For the demo purposes, what I'm going to do is edit here. And what I want is that, for example, severity, I might want to change it to moderate. And then if we had mail server configured, you can add that as email address as well. So it can be, go to your distribution list that if anything happens for these events, it will send an email. Then the next is SNMP trap. So a lot of times that networking team, they like SNMP traps because that's how they monitor their network. So what you can do is send those events to SNMP trap as well. So if something happens, it pops up in their SOC dashboards and all of that. Then let's go talk about microsegmentation. So this was the first use case that we started vRNI microsegmentation. When people buy NSX, or before even they consider NSX, they're like, I don't know what's going on in my environment. How do I even begin to fathom all the rules? That's where vRNI was a huge player, because they can come in, connect the vCenter. This will actually listen to all of the net flow going on between every single VM, ingress and egress. To begin with, a lot of customers had problems. How do I make sure that if anything is communicating with my physical database servers, is that going to be captured? Yes, as long as any packet coming in or out of the VM, it is going to be captured using that vWire going to port group, going to uplinks. It's going to be captured because all of the net flow data is being captured by vRNI. As you can tell, there's no data right now, but this is where we will come in, and also you can change the scope. So what we have discovered that this is pretty actually handy. You create a security group in NSXT and add that, or it will show up here. You filter that by that security group, and you can run the report for east-west. So now you're limiting the scope of your microsegmentation so that you can actually get that different projects and different waves completed for different customers if you have multi-tenants. So I'll pause here for the security. Any questions so far on that? I know I talked fast. Steve, anything?
I was just going to show real quick the configuration of the VDS.
Yep.
Right, so it doesn't use FQDN, it just uses the IP, so that's the proxy IP, right? And it should have done the same thing in my other vCenter here. Yep, there it is. So just to show.
Awesome.
What does it look like in NSXT?
I have no idea. Let's look. That would be, that's not what we want, right? Where would that be?
I'm trying to remember myself actually right now.
I have no idea. I'm not much of an NSXT guy yet, so.
It's okay. I don't know either. So I was just hoping you might be able to see it.
Maybe. Oh, that's interesting. No, I don't know.
Click on inventory for me, please. I can post that into Slack. I'll check in my lab.
It might be in the segment, right? Maybe not. Like
the ones you had created, I'm guessing.
Let's try this one. I don't know. Yeah, no clue. Good question.
Back. Okay, do you want to take me back to the?
Oh yeah, sorry. There you go.
All right, so plan security, again, for microsegmentation, that's what we use it. Second is for troubleshooting, that what we've been using so far as PAF. This has been very helpful. A lot of times the use case we are getting for vRNI is application team is requesting that there's a latency or something wrong with the communication between database server and web server, or web server and application server. How do we check? So we can come in and PAF, you pick those two VMs here, and it will show you the complete PAF, and 8 out of 10, it will actually show you the problem as well in the PAF, assuming all the data sources are added. So it might be something on the firewall level, router level, switch level. I'll show you that exclamation mark because we have about 155 checks going on during the PAF synthetic packet. If you guys want to see that, I can take you back here. I'm going to present my screen really quick and show you one thing. Any questions so far? What we have gone through? I like that. No questions.
We got about 2 minutes left, so.
All right, I'll be quick. So we created this pin board. Everybody has access to it. It's in the CMBU. What this does actually provide us the information that flow where NSX rule is not set. So this is kind of the project. That's how we created the task list for the NSX project, that until or unless we have these down to 0, we're going to continue using this pin board, because this provides me or tells me that which flows are not using any NSX rule. That means there's no microsegmentation at all. This has been very helpful for users, because this provides us information that where we need to start, where we need to begin for creating microsegmentation. And I'll pause here.
By the way, I found in NSXT where it is set, if you want me to share that. Okay. So under Advanced Networking Security, Tools, IP Fix. Right here, this got added.
And if we click on that one, it'll have that IP. Yeah.
Exactly. And this one must have been added too, but that's more of the profile, right? Oh, this is the DFW. Yeah. So with that, we got about 30 seconds left. Victor, is there anything else you wanted to share?
No, again, this was all about what day 1. We'll do a day 2 as well. We'll show how to create clusters for platform proxies and a little bit of troubleshooting as well.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.